Hey, money.
You gotta put it on the. It's on Zoom.
Yeah, we're gonna go with Zoom. I'll switch it up. Something to prop this up with.
Is it the same link?
Yeah, it should be the one on the camera.
Good morning. I can't hear you guys. I think you're muted.
All right, how's that?
Much better.
You might need to mute over there. Can you mute on that one? It's muted? Yeah, you have to change your audio. Oh, it's
That is much better.
Twins audio settings. Might be. What are we trying to do?
Hey.
Can you guys hear us?
All right, that's not gonna work. All right, just move the TV. And then we don't.
My thought process would be to turn the TV volume down and leave the computer volume on.
Okay, we're good. We're good. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes.
Great. Hey, close that door back there.
All right, well, welcome, guys. Thank you so much for waiting. We had a lot of things to figure out this morning, but we got them figured out, and we're going to go ahead and get started. The first adjustment we made is we got an extra special guest here. We had Craig Wilburn jump in for us since we had a couple people drop out this morning. So thank you, Craig. I'm going to start by letting everyone introduce themselves, but again, I just want to thank you guys for your patience. So we'll start from my right to my left with introductions, and then we'll get started.
I'm Jessica Law. I run a team of two, my business partner Shannon and I, with two assistants, and I have been in the business for 18 years.
All right, I've been in the business 18 years also. We started about the same time, I think. And we have a real estate team here as well. Excited to help you guys learn and grow and all that good stuff.
Awesome.
My name is Marquise. I have a team, an agent. Man, I've been in real estate 3 years.
Hey.
Already.
Getting old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been for 3 years.
Working
Yeah,
on
3 years.
status.
Yeah, so it's and anything I can do to help. So let's get it going.
Awesome. And one more question. What do you guys feel is your specialty? Do you specialize more in listings, more in buyers? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'd love to say that I specialize in one or the other, but that is not the case. Our team tends to run heavier on buyers, but we end up with some months more listings. We don't generally do that on purpose, but we get a lot of referrals for listings, and we do lead generate more for buyers. Shannon and I both like working buyers a little bit more than listings, but we end up with a lot of return customers that are listings.
So we're like a little bit different. I guess we spend more time prospecting for listings, but we actually end up doing 50-50, about 50-50 buyers and sellers at the same time. So, and then my main focus is just all aspects of running a business. That's what I'm focusing on the most. And having done so many buyers and sellers and everything else, it's just, you know, it's all part of the business. We enjoy all of it.
I don't really have a specialty. I just specialize in helping people get homes or sell homes. It doesn't really, I don't consider myself a buyer or a listing agent.
Okay.
Sometimes, I guess like Jessica says, it like I may have a ton of listings and no buyers, and I may have like a bunch of buyers and no listings. So I guess it just all depends. But yeah, I just specialize, just do my best to be an agent and run the business.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys being here. So one of the things that I wanted to start out with is obviously the pace of the market, right? So it's going a lot faster than we expected it to go. So I wanted to know from what you guys have been seeing, having listings obviously as well, and seeing those move off the shelf, working with some buyers. Have you seen the pace of the market affect a buyer's willingness to buy a home in general, for one, or for two, make an offer once they start shopping?
Very much so. For a while now, I've had people get frustrated and take breaks in some cases because they've made 5, 6, 7 offers and it not work out, especially if they're in situations where they're not cash or they're, you know, needing closing costs. So those are usually your tough ones. Or it's somebody that doesn't want to make a full price offer. You know, it's trying to educate the person in the situation that the market has, and they're, you know, not used to that, or maybe it's the first time they've made a purchase like this. So definitely seeing that people are getting frustrated and taking breaks in some cases if they're not used to it.
Can we?
Forgot, we got Mills on here
Okay.
also.
Yeah.
So we got.
Can you guys please forgive me for not introducing the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jonathan Mills. Thanks for joining us, man. I'm sorry, I almost forgot about you since you were on Zoom, but we're so glad you're here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you real quick and how much of a rock star you are?
I was going to interrupt anyway, so I'm just kidding. Whenever you put me and Jessica in the same conversation, it gets a little heated because we both are excited people. So my name is Jonathan Mills. This year I did about I did exactly 80 transactions with my business partner, Rennie, who's also my mother. I did about 55 of those transactions. She did about 25. We're hoping to kind of almost reverse that this year. So we're about 50-50 buyers, sellers. Next year, we plan to be 60% listings, 40% buyers. My job is now being full-time listing agent. So I am 100% sellers. And this year I did about 85% of my business with sellers. So I am the flip side of that, where I am the one receiving the offers and kind of helping my seller decide which offer would be best for them to accept. So that's why it might be valuable to share some opinions, because I know Jessica's writing a ton of them, and then I'm receiving a ton of them. Ironically, Rennie is writing an offer for one of Jessica's properties right now. So we're going to be doing some negotiations in a minute. Woohoo! So, anyways, I was going to jump in and say that it might be helpful to talk about the market of the moment, since we're tiptoeing around it. As of yesterday, I haven't looked this morning, but as of yesterday, there were 665 residential listings total. That is not just, that's not just Gainesville. That's Gainesville, anything we have in Trenton, High Springs, Newberry, Alachua, Waldo, Micanopy, you name it. That's it. We got 600 and something. Now, that sounds like a decent amount. You see the people shaking their heads up front. Craig and I talked about this a few weeks ago. He did some research, and January of 2020 was a rough January for us because we did not have much inventory. And at that time, we had 2,100 listings that were residential listings. And that was not a lot of inventory. The January prior in 2019, we came into 2019 with 2,400 listings, and we're at 660. So we're at 25% inventory, meaning we have 75% missing from a normal market, a quote unquote healthy market. And so we have an overwhelming number of buyers competing for an underwhelming number of listings, and prices are getting driven up. But luckily, after going through 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, appraisers are kind of having to rein us in a little bit. And so now we have to get really creative with how we're going to present our offers to make the best proposition, while realizing that we can't just use price as a negotiation tool, because the appraisers are going to rein us in and say, not so fast, which is a good thing. We're protecting our buyers and protecting the market long term. But I just wanted to make sure everyone understood the market of the moment is we have a normal number of buyers, if not an exceedingly high number of buyers. But we have a very little inventory. Now, the weirdest part about this is we're not seeing a decline in the number of new listings. We just lost listings. We lost 3 months of new listings. And I tried to convince my coach. I said, you don't realize Gainesville's at 70% less inventory than we're used to. And she goes, do a little favor for me. Pull up the number of new listings this year between October and November, and do it again for 2019 and tell me what the difference is. We had 10 less listings this year than we did last year in a 2-month span. It's not a new listing issue. We're getting just as many listings as we used to get. We lost 3 months of listings, and in that 3 months, the buyers didn't stop. The absorption rate is the issue now. So now we are putting out listings at the same rate we used to, but we have just as many buyers as we always did. So they're getting absorbed the minute they hit the market. So our inventory is not getting any better. In fact, it's actually getting worse. So I just want to make sure that everyone here understood that's what we're dealing with, and that's why we're hosting this panel, is to help you guys create competitive offers knowing that information.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of jumping on. In addition to that, this is not a thing that's relative specific to Gainesville. This is the whole nation is having the same issues. It's an inventory problem. Probably 90% of America has the same general situation, same problem. So I think, like Jonathan was saying, the most important thing that we have to do is just know that, and then educate the buyers that, hey, listen, when you do find a house, or if you have a certain type of home you're looking for, if something comes on the market, you better be praying and thinking about it the day before, and then making the offer the day you see it, because it's two things. Number one, it's going to be hard to get it. It's going to be competing with other offers. And second thing is, if you do wait, it's most likely going to be gone. If it were something that was a good product, good price, buyers are smart. They're doing their homework prior to you taking them out to see the house. So most buyers that we have generally know what they want, very specifically, and they're looking every day. And because they're only looking for one specific type of home, and when you have multiple clients looking for all kinds of stuff, they're actually going to be more educated on what they're looking for than you are. In most cases, they just need you to go in and help them understand what they're seeing after they get it, and then of course negotiate on their behalf.
I'm glad you brought that up, Craig, because that was actually one thing that I wanted to talk about, was how fast buyers are having to make an offer. And I know you guys look at the stats all the time, so you'll see that when median time to contract goes down, you'll see that the median time to sale goes down as well, but it doesn't go down as much. There's always a difference. It's always somewhere between 15 and 30% difference. So are you seeing the fact that buyers are having to make offers so quickly, make a decision so fast? Do you think that that's affecting the time to contract as well? Do you think that more people are pulling out of deals and having to go for a second home because they had to make a decision so fast?
So I will tell you this, being on both, since I do listings and buyers pretty regularly, I have had a number of, especially out of town agents, make offers on properties without ever setting foot in them. So as a listing agent, I don't like that. So if you have buyers who are out of town, make sure you are educating them how important it is to get your body to the property. Because that to me is a big deal. If I'm Jonathan, or I'm Craig, or I'm Marquis, or me as a listing agent, and I have 5 offers, and 2 of them are at the same price point. One has been physically in the property and one has not.
Absolutely.
Because that's what we're dealing with at this point. Because buyer A has never seen it, and they're gonna come down, and then they're gonna see it, and then what if they don't love it? Buyer B's already seen it. And what's happening is buyer A's, a lot of time they're getting there and then they're not loving it. But they're so scared because they've written 5 offers and 5 offers have been rejected. And so they're just making an offer sight unseen to get any house. So that's one thing I would highly encourage you to please get your people's butts in the house when they make their offers. And be the agent who says, I know what this market is. If it's the house you want, text me, call me, email me, whatever. I will be there to show you this house. If you want to work with buyers, that's what you have to be in this market. You have to be that. We will go see the house on your lunch break, after work, on the weekend. Unfortunately, that's not what we teach you to be, but in this market, it's what you have to be to get that offer. You have to be available. And that's what's important in getting it accepted, is that they've physically seen it. So I'm glad that somebody brought that up.
So then that brings up another question in my mind as a listing agent. How do you combat that? Knowing that, you are going to have people that are afraid, so they're going to make an offer simply for the sake of not losing it before they get a chance to see it. How do you prepare a seller for that? And how do you handle that as you get listed? Maybe your first offer is a sight unseen, you don't have another one on the table, or again, like you said, there's multiple offer situation, but one is there, one is seen and one hasn't.
Can I jump in on this?
Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
So I had that exact situation, Malcolm. I'm glad you brought that up. Little house, 135,000 over in Suncrest and Poppin area, but first offer came in within 2 hours of listing it, full price cash. And I saw the person who showed it, and I said, hey, just want to make sure, this person's local. I see that they're, there was some title company out of Jacksonville holding escrow. And they're like, no, they're from Jacksonville. We just went and saw it for him. And I said, when can we get him in the door? And he's like, well, he doesn't need to. We do this all the time. And I said, when can we get him in the door? Because this was a property that I knew needed about $15,000, $20,000 of work. And we made it very clear. And that's why we listed it that way. He said, we can come tomorrow morning. Well, in between that offer presentation and tomorrow morning were 4 more offers, one of which was $5,000 above full price in cash, seen by the buyer. At which point I have to educate my seller and saying, hey, I know this person likes the house. They've made an offer right off the bat. They haven't seen it. Then he just said, I'm not going to come if there's already that many offers. So it's a good thing that we waited. But educating your sellers and saying, hey, we're going to get more offers. There's not a shortage of offers. Just because there's someone throwing in a sight unseen offer doesn't mean we're not going to get anything else. We know we're going to get more. But that's the exact problem that Jessica was talking about, is educating your buyers and saying, hey, we know there's going to be multiple offers. If it's an attractive home and you're willing to throw in a sight unseen offer, there's a good likelihood that there are people who are going to be seeing it today and writing offers themselves. So just putting in some type of clause saying we're going to see it within 24 hours, or educating your seller or your buyer saying that. But do know that as a listing agent, I'm asking those questions and I'm educating my seller, but also educating them that some attractive offers might be coming in that will end. That same house, I told them right off the bat, we got a $140,000 offer. It was listed at 135. I said, hey, that's a beautiful offer. That's a super attractive. Don't get married to that number. And sure enough, guess what we closed at? 135. They used it as a way to basically build in $5,000 negotiation room for inspection repairs, and then came right back down to full price. At the end of the day, we sold it full price cash, got it closed in 2 weeks. But the point is, that's 2 things I wanted to talk about today, where if you're not seeing it in person with your buyer, know that is going to impact the validity of your offer. It's not a negative thing. It's just, if you haven't seen the home, this market is so volatile that if we take the home off the market for 1 day and your seller cancels, we have to restart all of our marketing, and we have to now educate every new buyer. Hey, the reason we put up, how does that make us look? Even if they cancel it because they didn't like it, people are automatically going to assume there's something wrong with it if the home is relisted back on the market. So typically, if I do have a sight unseen offer getting accepted, before I have my seller accept it, I'm going to go back to every other agent if it's a multiple offer situation and say, look, we have a super attractive offer. We have a very short inspection period. Please make a backup offer because we like to have, we don't want to get back on the market. And that's something I would also educate really quickly on. A lot of buyers are saying, it's shocking to me how many buyers are going, no, we don't want to make a backup offer. I have seen more contracts fall through this year than I have in a long time, since probably 2016, because of what's going on. There's people who are super picky and they probably don't have the right to be given the market. But backup offers are getting accepted at a very high rate. And if it's something that they want to see, the problem here is for your buyers is if they make an offer, it doesn't get accepted, and then the home pops back on the market, the likelihood that you're going to see it resubmit an offer in time is pretty low. So having that guarantee that if the initial offer falls through, your offer will be accepted is so nice. And you can continue looking at homes while that's happening. So that's my other 2 cents is don't get discouraged if your offer isn't accepted. Almost beg the listing agent saying, can we make this backup offer, and educate your buyers as to the importance of having a backup offer because that gives you a little bit of insulation in this market.
Yeah.
I just want to pause right there, and just for everybody who's watching, if you are not taking notes, if you're not writing this down, you're making a mistake right now. This is gold that we're hearing right now. So let's go back to you, Craig.
So yeah, on that same note, so I work primarily with home sellers, and so one of the things that we do, we're on the initial appointment, we're going through the market analysis, trying to figure out what the house is worth, what's going to sell for, and we're looking at other sales, and I always go into the history section of the MLS and look at the listings that closed. I have never seen in my whole 18 years of real estate as many homes being sold, back on the market, closed, back on the market, pending, back on the market, pending, back on the market. I remember nothing like it. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So yeah, buyer's remorse is a real thing. And I think the pressure of having to make decisions really, really quickly is causing people to, feel like they made a mistake. So what I tell my sellers now is to be prepared for that the people that are making offers, they're under pressure, and the probability of them backing out for any reason is very high right now. So sellers have to also be prepared for that churn of the client.
Yeah. Is there any way that as these offers are being negotiated that is there anything that you've been doing to buy the seller time to make those decisions, or anything of the sort, to see if there are some other buyers that want to have an opportunity to see it before they make an offer? Are we making any changes there?
I think it all depends on the offer. Like, I have a couple listings right now. They both receive offers. So for me, both cash. So for me, just making sure it's the right deal, everything is flowing correctly. Now, from a buyer's perspective, you just gotta make sure you're writing a good offer. Like you were saying, some people don't want to, nobody wants to offer. Like for me, for instance, somebody needs closing costs, I'm doing everything I can to get that built into the offer. Like, I'm not just like, well, hey, this home is $250. I'm gonna offer $239. Well, this is not the home for you. Let's go find something for $239 that you want to pay for that's worth that. And so, because you need closing costs, so we're not really offering $239. We're offering $245 because we want everything built in. And I hope you look at it, make sure the appraisal, all those kind of things. So that's how I've been dealing with my buyers, like the past 3 or 4 people I've been dealing with. Like, if you need closing costs, we can't like do lowball offers. And I try to explain people, like, anything less than asking price right now is a lowball offer. So either you're willing to pay what they're asking for. If not, then it's find something that you want to pay what they're asking for. If not, then just we pause, take a break, do something different. But I also tell people, like, even though the way the market is, right, pretty much a seller's market, right now things typically, for the most part, slow down. Around about February, price is going to go up. I mean, it's not just like going to just stay status quo, because the market, people think things are going to just happen. Like, we only got 600 listings, we got 1,000 buyers. it's gonna jack the price up. So you gotta supply the demand.
Educate
Yeah.
your buyer as much as you can
Yeah.
before they go look at property is critical.
Yeah, I try to set
Especially,
my best.
yeah, when you have buyers that need a lot of financing, like so your FHA buyers or VA buyers, or they need closing costs, you gotta prep those folks, man, in
Yeah.
advance that they're gonna be, especially if they're in that price point of 150 to 250. They have to know in advance that this is gonna be tough. You gotta start building their thick skin up early, because they get discouraged when they lose a house. I got people that lost a house. I mean, literally, I see the same name come through on multiple listings, 5, 6, 7 times. The same person still trying to buy a house, and they just keep getting outbid because. So you gotta prep those people early for that.
One thing I can tell you too is if you can talk people through the dynamics of interest rates in historical terms, it will help them, because doing this as long as Craig and I have been doing it, looking at interest rates and prices on a 30-year mortgage, and also looking at where we're going to go. You know, they can't really lower rates anymore, right? We're really at the bottom. I mean, the Fed's
Let's hope we don't get there.
Yeah.
Let's hope that
So we're really close as low as we can go. And historically speaking, if we're as close to as low as we're gonna go, it probably is the best time to get a mortgage when you're looking at terms of financing.
Yeah.
So if you're going to buy a home in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, now is the time to buy it. If you pay a little more for the house itself, but you're financing it over 30 years, do the math. It still works out better, because guess what?
Interest rate.
The interest rate is what gets you.
cheap
If
money.
you look at an amortization schedule over a 30-year term, that number is what people get hammered on. And the price point of a house is going to also keep going up in your value. If I look at someone who purchased in June of this past summer and what their house is worth now, they've got tons of equity in just 6, 7 months. So you're looking at people who've already got equity from a few months ago, and they got a great rate. So you just need to educate those folks that are feeling really bummed out because they can't get the house they want for the price they want. If you go through it up front, then they will not get as discouraged when they're having to pay over asking price, or they're having to pay asking price for the house they want, or they're having to make 4, 5, 6, 7 offers. So that's something, have that conversation with them first before they go out and they make their first offer. Also, please tell them to get pre-approved before you walk out the door with them, because that is definitely, we've got some chats. So see if
Yeah,
there's
some
something in the
chat,
chat.
some messages
check
popping up.
Because that's definitely something that people think they can only afford X dollars. And so maybe they're telling you they want to spend 150 because that's what they think they can afford. And realistically, the rates are so low that they would actually be paying less than their rent if they went to 175.
Can we,
Or download, and I hate saying to use Zillow, but Zillow Mortgage has a really easy to use mortgage calculating app. It actually will calculate interest, it will calculate mortgage insurance, it will calculate homeowners insurance, everything.
And our MLS too.
Yeah, and MLS has one, but the mobile version, I don't know if our mobile version is not that great. The Zillow app one is really easy. So if you want to calculate stuff really quickly, use one of those and calculate it for them, and just show them what their mortgage might be like based on the current rate. Give them an idea, because sometimes they need to see if they go up based on their pre-approval price, because sometimes people don't understand. They want to be at a certain number because they think it's going to be this much money, and then you show it to them and they're like, oh, dang, it's really that? It's only that? And I'm like, it's only this. If you pay this much more money, it's only $3 more, or $10 more, or $20 more. And then they're like, oh, I would totally pay that much more. So don't be afraid to educate them as you're going through the process.
Can I jump in on that? Because I'm
Well,
glad
hang
you-
on, Jonathan. One thing I do want to say is our mobile app is actually really good with that. We have a very good affordability calculator inside of your own KW app that everyone in this.
Oh, the
country
KW
has.
app, not the GAFR app.
No, some of the MLS in general has a good mortgage calculator, but.
Oh, they do, but
KW app. I
and
haven't
you
used that
also,
one.
which is a good opportunity to brand it as you're in the consultation with them. So one thing I hope you guys are hearing is that the buyer consultation is more important than ever, which is already something that is not done as often, nearly as often as it should. So I just wanted to point that out really quick. I think someone was going to jump in and say something. Jonathan,
Yeah.
Go ahead, buddy.
Dang, I'm sad you stole my words. I wanted to make that statement. So buyer consultations, we used to do them sometimes. I am forcing my team. It is a mandatory. If you are a buyer of ours and your name hits our database as a buyer, you have had a buyer consultation. We do not get in a car. We do not schedule a showing. We do not end the first call until we've had a consultation. And we ask the same questions every time. We have very detailed notes, so every person on the team knows exactly what that conversation was. And I'll share my questions with you so you can write them down if you wish. I think they'll help you. And it took us a long time to develop this because we would hit some roadblocks and realize, man, I didn't ask the right questions up front. So I'm pretty sure I have a pretty bombshell buyer consultation. It takes me about 10 minutes. On the long run, 30 minutes if they're coming in from out of town and we need to talk about Gainesville. Normally it takes 10 to 12 minutes. And if it's a Zillow call, again, if they want to see a house, we're not going to show them the house until they've had the consultation. So my consultation is the first question is, what's the goal of your purchase? And the reason that's such an important question is most of us are asking, what do you want? I want a 3-2, 1,500 square feet, 15 minutes to work. Awesome. Well, there might be 15 homes that match that, but then they walk in them and they go, this isn't what I'm looking for. What's the goal? I'll tell you, I'm looking for a home right now. I had to do this to myself. And I said, the goal of my purchase is to feel like I am not in Gainesville when I walk in my front door. I want to feel like I'm in Atlanta. I want to feel like I'm in Chicago. I want something that I haven't seen before. That's my goal. If I told you I was looking for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath townhome, you could show me a ton of townhomes and I wouldn't like them because it wouldn't give me that feeling. So my point is that's why I know that question works is if you ask it right, what's the goal of your purchase? How will I know that this purchase was successful on closing day? They will give you a different answer than 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet on 200. Then I ask, what do you feel you can afford and have you been pre-approved? If they've been pre-approved, they're going to tell you I have a pre-approved letter for X. Otherwise, if they haven't been, they're going to say, oh, I think I'm good for 200 grand. And I go, that's awesome. Great number. What is a comfortable monthly payment for you? And what's a stretch monthly payment for you? And Jessica, this is where what you were saying comes into play. So, if you don't ask a single other question, ask this question, because the number of people who are way off is shocking. I would say 60% of people were either thinking they could afford more than they can, or were grossly underestimating what they could afford. So I'll give you 2 examples of exactly that. So I had a guy who said, oh, I think I can afford about $225,000. And so I asked, great, that's great. How much are you putting down? Oh, I can put 20% down. Phenomenal. What would you like your monthly payment to be? And he goes, oh, $1,600 to $1,800 all day long. That's easy. That's a $300,000. That's a $325,000 mortgage. That's not a $225,000 mortgage. And so when I showed him on the mortgage calculator, here's what $1,600 a month looks like. He's like, oh my God, I can afford way more than I thought. Yeah, and he got approved for it easily. And another person, we had the same conversation, and they're like, oh, $200, $250. And I said, what's a comfortable monthly payment for you? Oh, $1,100 a month. Well, $1,100 a month is a $170,000 loan. And so my point is if they think they can get approved somewhere, you want to ask them affordability, and maybe they do get approved. Let's also talk about that. Getting approved and wanting to make that payment are 2 very different things. So just because they have an approval letter for $200,000 or $250,000, that means nothing to me. You're not paying $200,000. You're making a monthly payment, and that's what you actually care about. And so understanding what the monthly payment they can afford or feel comfortable making is very important to know, because a lender will approve them for a pretty big number, and some people don't want to pay that. So they might come in with a $200,000 pre-approval, but want to pay $1,200 a month, and that's not a $200,000 mortgage. So using that mortgage calculator on the first call and understanding what they can afford per month is much better than trying to figure out what they can afford on paper. And the last question is just the general. Are there any neighborhoods? Are there any addresses you can send me right now of saved homes that you've found that you like on your own? And Malcolm, I love the idea. You inspired an aha for me, which was pull them off of Zillow, put them on the KW app saying, hey, you want to run some of these numbers yourself? We have a KW app. If you want to send me those homes through the KW app, I'd love to start looking at them. I think that's a great idea. But those are my main questions is what's the goal? What do you think you can afford / have you been pre-approved? And even if they have been pre-approved, what is a comfortable monthly payment and what is a stretch monthly payment? And those are going to usually vary by about, I've noticed about $200 a month is the going rate. So if they say they want $1,200, they'll stretch to $1,400. And knowing that will help you. So when they send you a house and you're going, I don't know if we can afford that, you can look at the taxes, you can look at the purchase price, you can look at the interest rate, and you can pretty quickly figure out what that monthly payment will be and send that to them and say, hey, I know you want to see this house, but that's a $1,500 monthly payment. And you told me your stretch was $1,400. Would you be willing to stretch to $1,500 for this home? They're going to say yes or no, and they're probably going to save you some time. So a good buyer's consultation will save you a lot of time, a lot of stress, and a lot of heartache for your buyer, because they're not going to get emotionally attached to homes that they wouldn't be able to purchase otherwise.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that, John. That's all great thoughts. And I just want to reemphasize that one thing you want to understand is our KW app came out much long after Zillow. So obviously Zillow is going to have some technological advances, so to speak, but our app works actually very, very well. And it doesn't have to work perfect to remove a lot of the competition that you might be facing by letting your client shop on Zillow. So yes, it's not perfect, but what they're going to value about it is the one-to-one, it's the connection, it's the fact that you have a one-on-one with them and that they won't be bombarded by other real estate agents. Not to mention, we have pretty much all the same features. So just wanted to make sure that we understood.
It looks like it works the same way. Craig just told us it's basically got the same options.
Yep, it's got all the same options, and it's actually got an entire affordability calculator too. I mean, it's got all kind of tools that if you just play with it for a little while, you know, it helps you a lot. Plus the guide that walks them through the process, all that good stuff. So, all right, so let's transition a little bit. So obviously the pen. Did I want to show it? Sure. How do I do it on here?
It's on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. So Ryan actually went there. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. So Ryan actually put up an example. Here, is this the affordability calculator? Or did you put up a listing? So there's actually two is what you guys want to understand. So this is the actual general affordability calculator, which is under the settings tab, which you go to your picture in the bottom right, and it'll bring up affordability calculator. And this is what you see, right? So as you can see, you know, we're using that account, and then there you go at the bottom. So, you know, this is how he's using it. I mean, you can even put your credit score in. As you can see, there's a lot of things that you can put in here to get the most accurate, you know, estimate as possible. But you can also go to an individual listing. So let's say you're at the initial buyer consultation and you're talking to them about monthly payment, just like Jonathan Mills was mentioning. You're going through all those situations. 9 times out of 10, they have at least one house in mind that they would have been interested in if they were making an offer today. So use that as an opportunity to pull that particular house up and say, here are the numbers for this particular house.
And honestly, Malcolm, I use it sometimes when I'm at the listing and we're talking about making the offer. So we're out there day one, house just got listed.
That's a great point.
We got to make an offer and they're contemplating what their offer is going to be. And we're, you know, hey, what would it be if we went over asking? What would the price point be if we're here or there? And you can jump on this right here and calculate, well, if we're at asking price, it's this. But if we jump up $10,000, what would the difference be? And they can see that $10,000 is only going to cost them $40 a month or whatever the difference is. Because it's not. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be very small. And they can see it in real time right there. And then you're writing the offer. You're getting your offer accepted over somebody else's because you just convinced them in 5 seconds that it took you to throw those numbers in that calculator. So that's how you use a tool like this.
So speaking of that, one of the segues of the pandemic was so obviously it's changing our industry a little bit, you know, the what we do to facilitate the client's needs, right? So as we are selling these homes, you know, as faster and faster and faster, what are some things that you guys are doing to write the offers physically faster? Like, are you using any technology? What is it that you're doing to help keep up with the time needs of your client?
Well, I know for me, I've had my iPad, almost 3 years now. So, and my iPad, what I did is it has a cellular, it's connected to the cellular network. So if we go to a home, they want to do, I can write an offer right then, have them sign everything right then. We talk about looking at the home, talk about everything. You know, you pretty much, when you do a buyer's consult, we talk to people, you pretty much know where you need to be. So I can write it right then, have them sign, I can send it off, I can have it done in 15 minutes after they're home. So that's for me. I use the iPad.
So, yeah, we use app files. So in our app files, we have all our documents and templates all saved in there. And so literally we go to the client, pull up the app file, pull up the document you want, plug the information, and they can sign it right there on their cell phone.
Yeah.
Right. So, and if they're not comfortable signing at that very moment, we can just send them a signature request, and they can do it when they get home at night, at evening, or whatever. Plug it right in and sign it, and then we'll get right back to the listing.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm operating the same way. Most of my stuff is done on my cell phone. I have an iPad too, but I don't necessarily, my phone is just as easy for me to do it.
Can't find an iPad anymore.
Yeah. I can't ever find one. It's always missing.
iPad's a great investment.
No, he laughs about this because when Marquis was on my team a long time ago and he bought the iPad instead of a laptop, and Loop and the iPad did not love each other at the beginning of time. And so I used to give him a hard time because Malcolm suggested buy the iPad, and I used to tell Malcolm I was going to beat him up for telling Marquis to buy the iPad instead of the laptop, because we always had to help him do things on Loop. So that's just a little inside joke for you guys in the iPad. But yeah, Loop since has figured it all out. They have rectified the issues. But no, the iPad is a great tool. It is a really great tool, and realistically, it all works. The technology works with both.
Any tablet.
Any tablet is great. Is certainly doing using your technology and being familiar with your technology to be able to do things right away is what you need to be doing, because that's the faster you can do things, the better, because that is the name of the game right now. It's being available, being able to do it on site, or just doing it right away, not waiting, because if your offer gets in first, I just won one. This was the 6th offer I wrote for this person, and this is in a $400,000 to $500,000 price range, not a $250,000. This was the 6th offer I had written for this couple, and this was in conventional, jumbo loan category. And these people got it because we wrote the offer. Within the hour, we saw the house on the first day it was listed. And because the sellers had already made an offer and were under contract, and we wrote an escalation clause and made a good offer, they took our offer. They did not even look at anybody else's because we wrote the offer good enough, and they were already under contract, and they wanted it done. So the name of the game is getting it in and making it good enough to get it done.
And I'll have to say something real.
No, you're good.
Say something real quick. Like, we're not saying everybody go out. I know how it is when you first start. If you guys are new, then you gotta go out and buy an iPad, iPhone, or the notebook or whatever. If you want to be able to do an offer on site, get the little black KW folders we have here. Put two, whatever contract, if you want to use the as-is contract or the traditional contract, put 2 of those in the folder with you and take them with you when you go, when you're going to show homes. And I say 2 in case you make a mistake.
Yep.
That way you can use the other one, right? And then if there's something you can download an app. There's a scanning app for your phone, and you can scan it, upload the .loop or DocuSign right then, so you can get the offer in quickly. So you don't have to go out and buy all this crazy technology. There's ways you can do it. You still have pen and paper. I've done that a couple of times. So there's ways to do things. But you take a picture. Once you get the listing agent's number, you take a photo of each particular page and you can send it to them. They won't like that, but you got what your offers.
You got to get it in.
Yeah, you can have your offer to do it. I'm just saying, you want to do it quick right there. Like, I don't know, that's just me. I want it done right now. So for me, that's what I would do. But if you want to come back to the office and scan and upload, you can do that as well. I'm just saying, there's other ways you can do it without going to purchase an iPad and going to do all this other type of technology stuff. So that's one way you can save yourself money but still have be doing it right then and get things done.
I have 2.
And Jonathan, I want you. Go ahead.
What were you going to ask? I want to circle back on one thing each of them just said, but if you have.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
What Marquis is talking about it brings up an important thought for me. One reason I love me some Julia Ariette is every time she's going to show one of my properties, she calls me and she goes, "Hey, Jonathan, it's Julia. I want to show this property. Is it still available? Great. Are there any offers? Great. Thank you." That is the easiest thing in the world to do, but no one does it. And I'm telling you, it will save you some time, but it will also help you help your buyers, because she now knows, okay, if it's got 12 offers, we don't need to go waste our time. But also, does it have any offers? No, great. That now you can educate your buyers in that direction. Or, hey, it has 3 offers. Hey, Mr. Buyer, before we go see this property at 4 p.m., maybe we should write an offer and have it prepared and signed, or just prepared and fill in the blank of purchase price when we get there. But knowing who you're up against and what you're up against, agents will tell you. I'll tell you. I'll say, nope, we have no offers right now. Or I'll say, I had this happen on another listing. Someone called and said, hey, I'm about to submit an offer. And I said, that's great. I actually ended another call to answer your call. And that was a different agent telling me they're also bringing an offer on that same property. So now you know. You always want to ask, is there going to be a final and best? Because not all agents do that. You would hope they do, but they don't. And in preparation for a final and best, there's a wonderful thing that Jessica just talked about called an escalation clause. You might not get an opportunity to present a final and best. So you can write up any contract you want, but having an escalation clause in there and educating the listing agent and saying, hey, just want to make sure you notice that my contract that I just submitted has an escalation clause attached to it. An escalation clause basically says my buyer is willing to pay X dollars amount higher than any other competing offer up to X number. So let's just say the house is listed at 150. You can submit an offer up to 155 by saying, hey, I'm submitting a full price offer at 150. My buyer will pay $500 more than anyone else up to 155, provided that you can present me that competing offer. So let's say that you're up against someone else and they've presented an offer for 152.5. As the listing agent, I now have your offer of 150 with an escalation clause and this other offer up to 152.5. Well, because I know you're up to 155, your offer is effectively $153,000, and I know that. And I will then be able to educate my seller to accept your offer, present to you the other offer, crossing out the names and showing you, hey, we have an offer for 152.5. Your $150,000 offer is now 153, and my seller can accept that. And if that's something that is like going over your head, that's okay. It's a somewhat complicated document.
We got that. We got it covered, Jonathan. I came prepared.
I knew you would. I knew you would. So
we got copies of the Denise Hudson version of the escalation clause that I use on a regular basis. And I think Ryan's gonna put it in maybe in for the Zoom people too. So you guys can have a copy of that.
Great.
And it's basically a fill in the blank version.
This
So,
one is really easy.
Yeah, it's a nice and easy. It is something I've been using for years, and it has won many, many contracts for me. Do not be afraid to use it. Use it as many times as you'd like. It's a nice, easy way to set your buyer up to win the deal.
Okay,
And I love that. And I want to.
Sir, let's answer Kitty's question up here because I have to get ready to leave here in about 2 minutes, but I want to answer a question. So this is definitely a situation. This is happening a lot more with appraisals.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when you have, a buyer that's, tight on financing, needs a lot of help, closing costs or whatever the case may be, you want to be careful. The question was, what do you do when you have a buyer that is paying over asking price, but then they have an appraisal issue, the house isn't appraised for what they are trying to buy the house for. So when that happens, definitely when you're doing your market research as a buyer's agent, one of the things that you're supposed to be doing is making sure that you're educating the buyer on the range of value for that particular house on best case scenario. Obviously, no house has a price like this is the only price for the house. It's only what somebody's willing to pay for the house. So when you're doing your market research, you're going to be determining what's the range of potential value, low to high, that this property will definitely appraise for based on comps. So if you know that probably the highest comp we have for a house is 170,000, but in order to get the house is going to have to buy it for 180, but there's no comps for that. Then you're going to have to educate the buyer and let them know, hey, listen, you know what? Do you have the ability to make up the difference somehow in the event that we can't get this thing to appraise for 180? Do you have a cash somewhere or this or that? If you don't, then you have to be aware that there's a high probability that you're not going to be able to fulfill your commitment to buy this house if the appraisal doesn't go through all the way. Now, we're doing that as well on the listing side. So, we should be on the listing side, also educating the seller to say, listen, this buyer is really eager about buying your property for $15,000 over asking, but they have a 97.5% loan. That's going to be, if it isn't appraised, then this person can't make up the difference. So then the seller has to also be notified to decide whether they want to move forward because they might not be able to finish the race. So the answer to the question is basically just make sure you talk to the person. Now, in the event you do have, sometimes it happens where you have an appraisal that actually comes in low. That happens sometimes, all right? This is why when you're counseling your buyer, who the lender is matters. Who the lender is will sometimes prohibit your buyer from getting a contract, because if you bring them to one of my listings and I got competing offers, the first thing I'm looking at is, the first thing is number one is who's the agent. That makes a difference. So always maintain good relationships with other real estate agents.
Yes.
You better, especially if you're with this company, KW, you better always be known as somebody that people love to work with. Important for everybody in this office.
Yeah.
Number two, maintain good relationships with your lenders. Know who the lender is, because if you got a lender that has a track record of failure, doesn't give things the right way, is not expedient what they do, we know who these people are. Use local lenders. If you have an out of area lender, your chances are going to go down significantly with an out of area lender. Find a good local lender in this community who's going to be able to service your buyer. We do look at those two things. So in the event that you do have an appraisal fail for price, some lenders will allow you to get a second appraisal. And they'll take the second appraisal now, except for FHA and VA, because on FHA and VA, once that appraisal is done, it's a wrap. So I'm going to counsel you one other thing as a real estate agent: get to know the appraisers.
Yep.
Be friends with the appraisers.
Be nice to them.
Be nice to them. Be over the top nice.
Yes, let them know that you are here for them, because they have the ability to kill your deal. Some of them will do it
And they're
on
overworked.
purpose. Okay, so,
Really?
and some of them will save your deal on
On purpose.
purpose. All right, I've had homes that I'm like,
Yeah.
and then the appraiser figured it out.
Yeah.
All right, all legal, ethical, everything else, they figured it out. I don't care how they got there. If they got there, I'm happy. Right.
Well, and turning things in, right now, we have one where the builder didn't get the house done, and the sink was cracked, and and all this stuff, and it wasn't gonna be ready, and these people were gonna be homeless. And guess what? The appraiser's letting it do cost per cure, and they're just overlooking it. They didn't deflect from the price point, and they turned it in same day. They did not have to do any of that. But because it's somebody that is happy and lovable, and we've loved on, and the lenders loved on, they did it for us. They could have not done any of that. So there's certain things, just you need it done quick. You need it done, turned around. There's issues like that sometimes.
Yep.
So you
Well,
want to.
can you explain cost per cure really quick? I think a lot of agents watching are.
Okay, so if you, especially on new construction, if you're doing a final inspection, or if you're doing a renovation loan, they may have to come back, or there's something that had to be fixed on the house and it's not done, then the appraiser can check a box that's cost per cure. So they could remove that requirement for it to be fixed by closing. And they could say that amount has to be taken out of the price and set aside to fix whatever is wrong with the house. That's the cost per cure. So that can be something that can be done instead of it being fixed or done, completed by closing, if you can't get it done in time.
Awesome. That's a great thought. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people in the room, including myself, have never heard of that.
Right,
actually.
I
and-
So,
know the process.
Yeah, but I never heard the term.
yeah.
So
So thank you for
one
that.
thing to mention too, that I've been seeing, I know a lot of listing agents are doing as far as appraisals, going back to Kitty's question, a lot of them are removing I don't know if some of you were in the meeting the other day, but a lot of them are removing the appraisal contingency portion of the financing
Yeah.
from the contract on negotiation. So I, as a buyer's agent, make a offer, and then the negotiation comes back from the listing agent saying they remove the appraisal contingency, meaning that it doesn't matter if my lender would reject my buyer's appraisal and deny my buyer's loan. So that protection that's innately in that financing portion of the contract is now gone. So if my buyer's loan would have normally been denied because of the appraisal, and they would get their deposit back, that is gone.
Oh.
So for the deposit.
Okay.
So understand that there is no protection if that is removed there, if your buyer is doing a type of loan like FHA, VA, or even conventional, if the loan is denied because they don't have the money. So that is happening a lot. Be aware of that. Also, when you're writing these contracts, you can make non-refundable deposits if your buyers are comfortable with it to make your buyer look more attractive to the seller. So if your buyer has the cash to go over asking price, they're comfortable with doing that, make your deposit non-refundable. Because if they don't care if they pay 10,000 over asking price, whether it appraises or not, and they want to put 5,000 into escrow, and they're willing to put that 5,000 in a non-refundable position, then do it, because that sometimes will make your buyer look more attractive than the other 5 or 6 or 10 buyers. One other thing that I've been doing is if my buyer has 20% and they could put 25, I've been putting 25 because everybody puts 20. Don't steal that from me. Unless you guys, if you're up against me, don't put it.
Good luck with that one.
But just kidding, you guys can steal that. Only you guys though. But yeah, so I've been putting 25%, and guess what? It's won me three offers because my buyer put 25 instead of 20.
Percent down. Yeah, that's smart.
Those are the only thing different between
Can I tell you one?
3 separate
Well,
offers.
Hang on real quick, Jonathan. Before you jump in, I definitely want to hear what you want to say. Craig does have to head out. He sat in for us kind of on the impromptu, so he's got somewhere to go. Craig, before you leave, is there any thoughts that you wanted to share with us today?
This is great. Just again, we can, and this is just, we're doing this as a panel right now, but it doesn't mean we can't have this conversation ongoing any day. So, anybody has more questions, just reach out to anybody on the panel. You can ask us, we'll help you, whatever you need anytime. So just keep that in mind also. Thanks for letting me be here.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks.
Before we move on, before I jump back to Jessica, one thing I did want to note is I want to add to what they were saying earlier about getting the offer done and technology and the iPad and all those things. And it can be, obviously, as a newer agent or just as an agent in general, being an independent contractor, adding on expenses isn't always the best thing to do. So I'm hoping that when you guys join this company, that part of the reason just as much you join for culture is for technology and really understanding the technology that's available to you that you don't have to pay for, like DocuSign and .loop and the templates that they have and how easy it can make facilitating paperwork without you having to type the same thing over. Things along those lines. So just always remember that, constantly stay on your technology training and use those tips. Just like Marquis was saying, he can write an offer in less than 10 to 15 minutes. Part of that is just he's done it over and over and over again. Another part of that is having his systems and processes in order and using the technology that we pay for at a very, very, very cheap cost. So just keep that in mind also. You had a thought that we paused on. So Jonathan was going to jump in. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you. Hey, I wanted to share another creative technique to Marquis. You brought this up earlier. When you're trying to add in closing costs into a contract, there are certain ways to do it to make it more attractive. And I learned this. I've done this 3 times successfully now in 1 multiple offer situations by putting this verbiage in the contract. I have found that many buyers would really prefer closing costs, but don't need them. Now they would strongly prefer them. It would make a much better comfortable situation, but it's more of a, we'd really prefer it. In that situation, and understanding if it's not a need, it's a high preference, this is how I write my contracts. We go above full price. We write in saying, and sometimes we go well above full price. I'll give you an example of one I recently did on one of my own listings when we were in a 5-way multiple offer situation. And we had to be ethical, and I let my buyer choose the price, and this is what they did. The house was listed at $198,500. My buyers basically said, we're willing to pay $208,000, $210,000, but we really want some closing costs. And I said, great. Why don't we do $210,000 with $2,000 in closing costs? And we're going to write this verbiage that says this. If the home appraises for below $210,000, we will be reducing the amount of closing costs dollar per dollar based on the appraised value. If the home appraises at $208,000 or less, there will be no closing costs paid. So basically, if we get $210,000, heck yeah, we just got $2,200 or $2,000 in closing costs. If we get $209,000, heck yeah, we just got $1,000 in closing costs. If it appraises at $208,000 or less, we're not getting any closing costs, but our appraised value came down and our purchase price is coming down. So there are ways to write your offers so that you can try. And if you don't get it, the sellers are protected, because at the same time you want to protect your buyers. To make your offer competitive, you want to protect the sellers.
So
That's good, that's good.
Jonathan,
Oh my gosh.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because you can also use similar verbiage for the up to what you'll pay above asking price for appraised value.
You know, with
So-
using the escalation clause?
Well, no, similar to that, but let's say you know your buyer only has $5,000 or $10,000 to pay over asking, right? And you're going over asking. You can actually write in that if the home does not appraise for purchase price, so let's say it's $250,000. If the home does not appraise for whatever, then buyer only agrees to pay up to excess of X dollars above appraised value. So that way, because let's say the list price is $225 and you're going up to $240 or something crazy, you know what I mean? And they really only have 10,000. So you can actually say that the buyer would max out at 10,000 over appraised value. So that they don't have to go anywhere over appraised value more than 10,000. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
So even though they're willing to pay up to a 250 or 240, as long as it appraises and they can finance it, if it only appraises for 225, then they only have to pay 235.
And that language would look something like, in the event the home does not appraise for purchase price, buyers agree to pay $5,000 higher than appraised value. And that's an easy way to write it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
One other
that-
way would also be on the appraisal contingency, whatever the difference between the purchase price and the amount of closing costs that you're asking for, is that's what you put as your appraised value. So if it's 210 and they want 5,000 in closing costs, we set our appraisal contingency for 205, knowing that if it appraises for 205 or more, we're good to go, we're moving forward. And then we decide what to do with closing costs there.
Right. So there are a couple of ways to protect your buyers and their cash if they only have an X dollar amount of cash when you're trying to negotiate these higher than asking price offers. So if you guys are trying to craft those and you have questions, come see Jonathan or I, and we can help you out with that.
So last question. So we're a little bit past 11, but this has just been so great. So just one last question that I just want to pose to everyone. In general, we've talked about, the changes in appraisal contingencies, people removing those, things of that nature. But what trends have you been seeing this year, especially with the pandemic, and what people are including in their offer, aside from the appraisal contingency and things we've already mentioned?
I mean, specifically it's very clean. As far as on the listing side, extremely clean offers. They are not asking for anything anymore. Most of them are at least asking price, if not over. Some of them are, adding on small things, but it's very rare. I mean, home warranty maybe, but very rarely that. I very rarely see anything, hardly at all. It's really back into the seller side. It's more on the when you come back from the seller, it's the seller coming at you with things. So it's like that flip side. When it's a buyer's market, it's everything coming at you from the buyer asking for everything. Now it's coming at you from the seller side. It's, hard money deposits. It's lower inspection periods. It's removing appraisal contingencies. So to me, it's like we flipped over and now we're seeing responses from sellers become different. I've seen a number of sellers have inspections done prior to putting their house in the market and then asking for a short period of time inspection and providing you copies of their inspections.
Pre-listing
So
inspections coming
So
back.
that's something I'm seeing more and more of, because they don't want to give people the opportunity to even waste time off market.
We
So
call that a
that's-
pre-listing inspection for those of you at home.
And they fixed whatever they're telling you, they fixed whatever was on there, and you can check those things out, but they don't want you wasting their time off the market.
Yeah.
So.
Buyer letters are becoming more popular as
Oh,
well.
glad you said that too.
Submitting a letter with your buyer, a cute little picture, and we love your house, even if it's the 7th house they've written that letter for, just changing the address, it doesn't matter. Sellers create an emotional bond with them, because you have to realize we're looking at 5 different offers and there's no faces attached. It's names and numbers. And so getting a face in a letter really makes an impression, believe it or not. People want to,
Especially if it's
it's an emotional process. And so they want to make sure there's an emotional connection with their buyer. And it can also start the transaction on a really good fit, because now there's some empathy on either end. It's not just numbers and people, or numbers and names. And then, like Jessica said, increased deposits. Understand, deposits don't matter unless you default, and you're protected for your mortgage. If you default on your mortgage prior to that loan commitment period, you're covered. If you cancel during the inspection period, you're covered. You can put a $30,000 deposit, it doesn't matter. The higher the deposit, the better. The shorter the inspection period, the better. Basically, any dates make a huge difference. I'll tell you, we were in a multiple offer situation on one of my listings where 2 offers were the exact same. One was putting more money down, and believe it or not, one person having a shorter loan commitment period by 5 days and a shorter inspection period by 5 days won them the contract. Just because of date, the smallest thing. So understand, educating your buyers and saying, we want to make this as sexy as possible. So anything we can do to make this sexier. Can you put another $1,000 down? Can we do the inspection? I'll have inspectors out there tomorrow if you want. If you can decide in a week, let's put a week. Doing any little thing you can, that's just adding a little bit of salt to the flavor, and it makes a big difference when there's multiple offers.
Well, and to piggyback off of, like, you know, when it comes to the loan commitment, the inspection fee or whatever, when it comes to that deposit, that's something the sellers can see, like, well, we can get this if X happens. But you gotta make sure you educate the buyers that, you know, well, you can lose this if X happens. We have to make sure that within this time period,
We do what we're
supposed to do, so you don't lose X. And we can, if we need to, we get your money back. Because you don't want to lose 5, 10, 20, 30 grand. Just
no, but that's being very confident, knowing your dates and following them, and knowing that you're working with the right lender. I have lenders where I'll put an expedited loan commitment period, because what we're going to do is we're going to spend an extra $100 and expedite that appraisal. So I'm getting appraisals done on listings prior to the end of the inspection period. When I submit an offer, I'm writing a letter to the sellers. I don't write buyers offers anymore, but my team does. And what we say is, hey, we're using Chris Doring. The reason we're using Chris Doring as the lender is he has access to expediting appraisals. I guarantee we will have the inspection done within 10 days. If not, we will cancel this contract. And I know he will, because day one, when I submit that contract, we are already ordering the appraisal rush, and it will be done within 7 days. Very, very few lenders can do that, which is why I use Chris Doring religiously on all of my purchases and all my buyers. But for that extra $100, that's another thing the buyers is doing, is knowing we're going to get this appraisal done before the inspections are even done. We're getting the inspections done. Now, not every buyer can afford to do that. This is not a one size fits all process. But if your buyers are desperate and ready, willing, and able to move forward, anything you can do to figure out the bad and ugly up front is going to make that deal a lot more attractive to those sellers, and knowing that they're working with someone like that. And that's the importance of choosing a good lender versus Lending Tree or whatever, I don't even remember, Rocket Mortgage or whatever, is these people don't have access to do things like that. They don't have access to local lenders or local appraisers. So that's one other thing I can talk with you about with why I use some of the lenders I use, is because we can do things like rush an appraisal. And then I can educate the listing agent in saying, hey, we're going to use this lender. The buyers agreed to rush the appraisal and pay that additional fee because we want to get this done. So, but I completely agree, Marquis. If you're not on top of your dates, you have a lot of risk involved.
Yeah.
But if you are, if you know,
Real quick, and then we'll
The,
Go ahead.
the other thing I will tell you too is know about your buyers, because especially if your buyers have, you know, first responder jobs, medical jobs, delivery jobs, jobs that right now are very secure. Don't be afraid to brag about your buyers, just like you brag about your lender to the listing agent. So just like you're having your buyer write a letter about how much they love the house and how much they want the house, write your own letter to the listing agent or your email or text about your buyers.
wow.
Because that is something that is a concern right now. I've actually had listing agents ask me what my buyers do because they're concerned. So don't be afraid to also say that to the listing agent. Hey, my buyer is a doctor, a nurse, a firefighter, a whatever.
If you're a firefighter, you will get that. You will get that.
You see what- But I'm saying, because these people are people who aren't going to lose their jobs in the pandemic.
Everybody's a firefighter.
You know what I mean? And they respect their jobs, and so but I'm just saying.
Spoken like a true firefighter.
My dad and grandpa were firefighters, I love firefighters.
We do love our
But-
firefighters.
Love my firefighters, but I'm saying it is a big deal for listing agents,
Yeah.
because they can go to the seller and say, these are people who aren't gonna lose their job 4 days into the contract. So it is something to look look into and ask them and say, hey, we can make a case for you guys by saying you do this. So that's just something else to say too. So make sure you're doing that if you have those buyers.
You
One
guys
more
want to
thing.
try throw something in? I don't do as many sales as you, obviously, but I have a pretty good track record with buyers
hang
agents.
on, Jackie. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm going to wrap up really quick, and then we're going to do an open question session. So give me just a couple minutes. And we're gonna
Okay, it's okay.
So you had one closing thought that you wanted to say on that, right? You were about to say something. Oh, okay. So you got to run.
Yeah, well, as far as, we just get it on the head, as far as like, making sure you know your dates and things like that. Jonathan said it, so we're good. That's it.
Okay, perfect. Well, we appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you for
I
having
wanted
me.
to just point out, Jackie had asked a question a little bit earlier about the escalation clause. If it wins, do you update the price on page 1 of the contract and have everyone initial? Do you toss out so basically, if you do win the escalation clause, how does that affect the paperwork essentially? So can you guys, since our last two, can you guys touch on that really quick?
So you're gonna remove there is a other section on the bottom of the contract. That's when you present the escalation clause, you're gonna check that box, you're gonna write an escalation clause, and you're gonna add it as a blank addendum. And you're just gonna use that format I gave you guys. When you win it, you're gonna change that back page, remove that verbiage, and you're gonna change the purchase price to the new purchase price.
Sure.
I personally, my version asks for a copy of the next closest offer because I want to see that whatever my buyer is paying is moved up because of it. Now, sometimes an agent will call me and say, look, the next closest offer was this, but my seller wants to know if your buyer will go to X. Sometimes it's just a random number.
Yep.
And if your buyer is willing to do it just to get the deal done, then do it. I mean, but I like to know that my buyer's only paying what they have to pay in a multiple offer situation. Because that's the way I read the escalation clause.
Exactly.
So
I always keep that escalation clause in the loop for a paper trail because I want to show we submitted offer and escalation clause, remove escalation clause, insert other contract. Here's why we're paying the price we're paying. And that way there's a paper trail just in case later on the person with the most paper wins in a debacle. So I always like to keep that stuff in there. And that's sorry if I tiptoed around that answer, Jackie, when I responded to you earlier. Just want to make sure that was understood. But Jessica was totally right.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. So that's all that I had as far as what I planned on us talking about today. Jackie, I know that you have a question, so I wanted to get to that. And just after your question, open it up in general to anybody who's either here with us today or anybody who's watching on the Zoom call, if you had any questions for the next few minutes while we still have these two great minds with us. So we'll start with you, Jackie.
I know I already asked a few questions, but I was just going to actually give you one of the things that I've been doing recently that's really helped me on the buyer side. Like I said, I know I don't do as many sales as you guys, but whenever I offer for my buyers, I feel like I have a pretty good track record with my offer being accepted. When we look at the houses, I always tell my buyers to open all the doors, look at everything really up close, because this is the house they're going to be buying. And especially for as is, whenever I list houses, one of my pet peeves is getting an as is contract and then having them literally, try to negotiate everything. So I always tell my buyers, look at this when we're going to do an as is, if that's how you choose to go about it, we have to consider, the things that we can see in the offer. So then we talk about the price, we get an offer together. And when I present it to the listing agent, that's something I always mention. This is an as is. When I put in an as is offer, it is as is. We've obviously, these are a few things that we already noticed. We already, deducted some of the money from the offer, and this is our solid offer. Obviously, if something that we don't know about, that we don't see, that's unexpected comes up, yeah, we may do a little negotiations, but this is a good solid offer on your house as is, and we're not going to penny nickel dime everything on the inspection. And I think that really puts us ahead when we do our offers. So just want to throw that in.
Especially when receiving those offers. And now something I do to piggyback off of you, this might be something you can keep in your back pocket. I look at dates on that first showing. I also educate my sellers. So I was just sold a house that was listed or built in 2006. That used to be great. 2006 is probably one of the worst years as of right now to buy a house because everything's nearing the end of its lifespan and probably hasn't been updated yet. So hot water heaters last 8 to 12 years, AC units last 8 to 15 years. So when you're buying a 2006 home and everything's 14, 15 years old and the roof is getting to that age, things are starting to look a little spookier. What I do is if ages are looking a little deterrent, I throw in a home warranty and explain in our letter or in our email presenting the offer saying, hey, just want to let you know, don't be shocked by this home warranty. The reason we've included this home warranty is we know when we get their inspection that there's going to be a note from the inspector that says, hey, this hot water heater is at the end of its lifespan. This AC unit is at the end of its lifespan. And many buyers take that and say, oh, well, we want to negotiate because it's at the end of its lifespan. Well, we've gone ahead and put in that home warranty. So we're going to pay $500 or ask you to pay $500 up front, but just know we're not going to ask for the replacement of a hot water heater, the replacement of the AC unit, the replacement of any appliance unless it is broken, like not operable. Just because it's old or maybe hasn't been serviced recently is not an excuse for us not to buy this house. And I have that same conversation with my seller buyers and educate them on why we're doing that. So I love that you do that because knowing what you're getting into up front and educating your buyers and saying, hey, here's why we're doing it is very important. But keeping that in mind for homes that are built 15 years ago is a good idea.
That's great. One thing real quick, Jonathan, that I also wanted to ask is, as you're including the home warranties in those, have you seen any issues with the life expectancy? Like if it is getting to that point, that is one thing that I've noticed is sometimes, home warranty companies are a lot like insurance companies where they don't really want to, fulfill what you're paying for. So how has that been working for a lot of your recent past clients?
It's been fine. I've had one person who had $4,600 in repairs done from their home warranty, but I also had someone who was very, very upset, and this was a learning lesson for me. We had done this. The AC unit was 18 years old. We included a home warranty. All was well. Air conditioner broke 3 months after they moved in, and the sticker with the label of the manufacturer of the AC unit was missing. Guess what? That's one of the fine print, fine lines. They're not going to replace that AC unit. So I actually coughed up some money and contributed that to my buyer saying, I'm so sorry. I never knew that was the case. I was not educated that the missing sticker was, now we knew the brand of the AC. We had a person come out and say, this is a Carrier AC unit. The sticker was not on the front of the machine. So that's something to know. If you see a machine and it's older and the sticker is saying the brand name of it is not on the front of the machine, the insurance company or the home warranty company is going to say that because they can't immediately identify the brand of the AC unit, they can't fix it or replace it because they can't get an exact quote of how much that exact unit would be to replace. Kind of BS, but it's true. So know that. However, that is the only time I've had that happen. And I've had lots of AC units get broken or hot water heaters fail shortly after a buyer moved in, and usually they're protected. I also, if I'm the one listing the house, I have the AC unit serviced prior to putting on the market, and I just let the buyers know, hey, this unit was serviced by Balance Heating and Air. We did this just before it was listed. It is 15 years old. We don't know the lifespan of the unit from this point on, but there's some new Freon in there and it's running fine and it should be good for the next 6 months, or we prepaid for a service plan. And that way the buyers know that we've at least put in a little initiative. But yes, great for bringing that up, Malcolm. And I think that's a great, my failure could be one of your learning lessons. Just know that now you're gonna look really educated. If the hot water heater or AC unit is missing the manufacturing sticker label on the machine, the home warranty is not gonna cover it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Two comments to failures and lifespans and warranties. Over the course of 18 years, I've learned two things. One, older public home protection has the least amount of loopholes.
Yep.
If you're going to write a home warranty for your buyer, that is the only company I write with, and they don't get any money from me. So just know there are no reasons for me to say this, other than it will cause you the least amount of trouble in your long going span of dealing with buyers and their backlash.
Mm-hmm.
Also their customer service, if you have an issue that is technically like some sort of issue with their loopholes, they will probably cover it if you call and ask them to.
I second that.
So I've had really where the buyer didn't do what they were supposed to do, or somebody didn't get a check to them and they've still covered it.
Mm-hmm.
So just know that they are the best. They also have a lot of extra coverages that you can get. So if you want to cover like a smoke detector where nobody's coverages cover smoke detectors, they have a coverage that covers smoke detectors.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend them. In terms of things that are now
quickly becoming a thorn in our side in terms of real estate is roofs. There are very, very few insurance companies that will now cover a roof less than 10 years old. So when you are talking to a seller about replacing a roof, metal roofs are now absolutely arbitrary. Nobody should pay for a metal roof because there's absolutely no reason to spend any money on any roof that lasts longer than 10 years because insurance companies don't want to cover them. So when you're talking to a seller who's going to sell their house or they're going to re-roof their house, it doesn't matter how many years the architectural shingles are going to last because the insurance company is not going to cover it. And when they go to sell their house, the buyer's going to have to replace it anyways.
Yep. And knowing that up front and educating your sellers. For instance, if you have a house with an 18-year-old roof listed at $279,900 and you get a super attractive offer with a roof replacement included in it, wink, wink, I'm sure your sellers will be open to considering that because I'm sure it's been expected. But having your sellers know that that's the exact same thing. I told my 2006 sellers that for that home, you got saved by the skin on your teeth because your roof is 14 years old. We're closing on December 31st. If this was delayed one day, we would have a whole lot of issues because your roof is now 15 years old. And 15 is even worse than 10. But just asking the right questions up front. And I know that actually, I'm glad you brought that up because, who was it? I don't see the comment anymore. Oh, Crystal. Not every, Crystal's question is, I have a question about an escrow holdback for roof replacement. I'm assuming I know what the question is, but not everyone's willing to do them. Not all insurance, it used to be most insurance companies were cool with that. I have a closing today where they were not willing to accept that language. If they do, they're going to want the language. It used to be 30 days. Now it's 15 days. They want a signed contract with a deposit made for the roof with a licensed roofing contractor, and they will have an inspector out there 2 weeks after closing to insure it. If it's not, you won't have insurance. And they're okay with you. And not everyone's willing to do that. There's probably a third of the number of companies willing to do that today that were in January. So just keep that in mind. And so shopping with an insurance agent like Brightway, Christy Moffat at Brightway does a lot of my insurances solely because she shops about 40 different companies. If you can have someone, especially if it's an old roof situation, I always send them to a Brightway or some type of broker for insurance because you're going to need it. Calling one by one is going to drive you nuts.
Angie Arnold with Arnold Insurance too. Angie's been doing it for a long, long time. She owns the company. Angie's got some roofers. She just did one for me as well. So finding somebody that knows what they're doing and has a broker option is your best bet because there's limited amounts of companies that are doing it.
Correct.
So don't just go to the one.
What was her name? Can you put that in the chat just so everyone has that? I'll put mine in there. Mine was Christy Moffat, but I know that you're really strongly a fan of that one, and I would encourage I'm going to put that on my vendor list. And also, let's see. Someone also said Crystal Sowers asked, "What home warranty company?" So I concur with this too. Old Republic Home Warranty. It's Old Republic. We have brochures of theirs and
orhp.com is their website.
And what I was going to ask is, do you guys have a local rep for OHRP or are
yes,
you
we do.
Going through?
We do have a local rep. In fact, I'll get Jenny to, because it used to be the girl that used to do it, I think just rolled over and they've got someone new doing it. Because it used to be Carrie. But I think Carrie's not our person anymore, but I know Jenny's got who it is. So I'll get you guys the rep.
Perfect. Okay, so we got somebody putting in, insurance. All right, so any questions from folks here? Any other questions for our folks from our folks?
Someone earlier asked, Lisa asked, Jessica talked about putting 25% rather than 20 and how it won her off.
Yes.
That was in reference to, if you know
the down payment.
Go ahead and answer yourself.
Yeah, so when I was talking about writing the offers, so a lot of people are going to do a conventional loan. If they're doing a conventional loan and they're putting 20% down, they can, typically most people probably have the extra 5%. And even if they don't, keep in mind, a lot of them have the cash, even if they don't want to put it down, they could show that they have it. And at the end of the day, if they don't choose to put it down, nobody's going to handcuff them to putting it down, right? They could show it. They could give proof of funds. And then at the end of the day, if they still decide to put 20% down, nobody's going to show up with a gun to their head and say they didn't put 25% down.
Because they're probably not going to find out till last week anyway when it's
And
about
the
time for
seller's
closing.
not going to walk away from closing because they didn't put 25% down.
Yeah, that's a great thought.
But if they got 25% that they could show proof of funds, put it on the offer. Because at the end of the day, the 25% cash looks better than 20.
Mhm.
So even if they really want to put 20, but they have 25, put it on the offer.
Mhm.
If they can show the proof of funds for 25%, do it.
Mhm.
Because it makes you look more attractive than the person with 20.
Mhm.
And if you show up at the last minute with 20% in your loan, that seller's not going to take that house away from you.
I
That
have
is a
to
great
run,
thought.
unfortunately.
Mind blowing. I never thought
It's
to do
just
that.
a way to make your offer look better than the person next to you.
Can I
And really
say
what it
something?
does
Sorry.
is-
I'm really
Go-
detail oriented. The one thing about that, I would be just make sure to tell your buyer, to tell your buyer if you're doing that, is your financing terms are going to be off of the contract. So if your buyer then puts, their application for a 20% loan, but on the contract it says 25%,
Yeah,
and they
their
don't get
financing terms
approved.
are,
Yeah.
their financing terms are connected to that. Yes.
Yeah,
You
so
have to
just,
be- you have to
I
be
would just kind of
explicit.
put a disclaimer, like, make sure your buyer knows that at the end of the day, if financing falls
Well,
through, it's gonna, at
They're
the end of the contract, right?
they're all connected to that. They have to be
Yeah.
comfortable with doing it.
Yeah.
Correct.
They
Yes.
have to be
I just wanted to
comfortable
kind of throw
with
that
doing
out
it.
there.
Yeah, they have to be comfortable with doing it. But like I said, at the end of the day, if they decided at the last minute they didn't want to do it, they don't have to.
Mhm. They go in
That-
knowing that they might,
They
but
have to have the money. They
is
have to
that-
have the money. They have to be
Right.
willing to do it. But at the end of the day, if they don't,
Yeah, because I know in the contract that the contract does give the seller and the listing agent, limited rights to know what's going on with the buyer's loan. But
here's
but
the
it's
deal.
only-
The financing, and we all have to understand that. The financing terms, the credit denial has to come from the lender. You guys all understand that lenders are not doling out denial letters very easily, right? Does anybody understand that, Jackie? Do you understand that? Do you understand that lenders are not doling out credit denial letters based on financing terms? If somebody's got 25% in their bank, they're only going to get a credit denial letter because of something within their underwriting terms. It's not going to have to do with 20% versus 25.
Okay, no, I didn't realize that, so thank you.
Yeah, so understand this. If they have 20 or they have 25, that loan denial is going to have nothing to do with whether we put 20 or 25. It's going to come from everything else.
Yeah.
It's the
Because a
same
conventional loan is based on 20%, 80-20 value. So that's the way it works. Yes, we can write it on the contract. The loan is going to be, put whatever way the loan is applied towards. But at the end of the day, that credit denial letter is going to be based on that person's credit. It's going to be based on their tax returns. It's going to be based on their application, and it's going to be based on cash in the bank. If their cash in the bank looks different than what they told the lender they said they had, that could be something that throws them off. But if they have 25% in their bank, they have it.
I'm going to
So-
relate this to what we talked about earlier with closing cost. It's the word preference. If they have it, but they don't want to use it, that's very different than not having it. And so
Correct. Now, they can't lie about having it.
No, but
Right.
our whole point is, so what we're trying to teach you is how to make you have the most attractive offer. And so what Jessica
Right.
proposed was, let's show our cards, because that's what's going to help us win. And if you might make a decision that maybe you'd like to have 5% more in your bank account at the end of the day, we're probably not going to get slapped for that. If we do, here's disclaimer. If we do, you're going to just go with it. If not,
5%.
there's a good likelihood we're going to be able to reverse that. And just understand, the whole point is just showing the cards. I just wanted to jump in real quick because I do have to go. I also want to thank Jessica because I love her, and every time I'm around her, I learn something new. So hopefully you guys did too. And Malcolm, thank you for hosting this, but I just wanted to say thank you all for letting me talk today. And it was so good being here, and thank you, Jessica, for all your knowledge. You're awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Same to you,
Thanks so much
Jonathan.
for all your time. I was actually gonna go ahead and wrap up because I know we got a lot of folks that gotta finish closing some deals today. Today, everybody's putting out fires this morning. So we thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really hope that you learned a lot. I know that I did. You know, I've been in this business for a long time, and every time I get a chance to hear a Jonathan Mills or a Jessica or Craig speak and teach, I always walk away with 5 or 6, sometimes 10 things. So I hope you guys got a lot. I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to other opportunities to bring you guys something like this. All right, so thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you again soon.
See ya.
Hey, this is Angela Wilson, and that's her number. She's our